Hola y muy buenos días, señoritas. Well, here we go with our last use of the subjunctive. And today, the way the day looks fits our last use. As you can see, there's a lot of fog and mist in the air. Our last use is called the subjunctive and adjective clauses. And this last use will be about the subjunctive and whether things exist or are indefinite. And so if you take a look at the picture there, it really depicts what the subjunctive is all about, the future being a mist. Now I do want to bring up, señoritas, this is the last use of the subjunctive and adjective clauses. However, we will continue using the subjunctive as the year goes on. We have a couple other tenses in the subjunctive to learn. So now we have the subjunctive and adjective clauses. And just like the subjunctive and noun clauses, the subjunctive and adverbial clauses, we need to know what an adjective clause is. And an adjective clause, once again, is a subordinate clause, just like the noun clause is an adverbial clause, that modify a noun or pronoun in the main clause. So once again, we have a main clause, subordinate clause. That noun or pronoun is called the antecedent. So we have examples in English. I have a dog that barks a lot. Dog is the antecedent. And that barks a lot modifies dog. So therefore, it's an adjective clause. I am looking for someone who speaks Spanish. Who speaks Spanish is the subordinate clause that modifies someone. So now we have the adjective clause. And if the adjective clause refers to a person, a place, a thing, idea that either does not exist or whose existence is uncertain or indefinite, the subjunctive is used in the adjective clause, which is considered the dependent or subordinate clause right there. And just like we learned in noun clauses and the adverbial clauses, we also can use the indicative. If the adjective clause refers to a person, thing, place, or idea that is clearly known, certain, or definite, that's when we use the indicative. Just like we learned in the noun clauses and in the adverbial clauses. So now take a look at these models right here. We have one group right here that all the sentences in the subordinate clause, the verb is in the indicative. Necesito el libro que tiene información sobre Venezuela. When you say necesito el libro, that book exists. I need the book that has information about Venezuela, as opposed to the group in the subjunctive. Necesito un libro que tenga información sobre Venezuela. I need a book that has information about Venezuela. We don't know if that book exists because we're saying a book. Let's go down to the next one. Quiero vivir en esta casa que tiene jardín. Esta casa, probably right in front of you. This house, you're looking at it, you see it, it exists. Indicative. As opposed to, quiero vivir en una casa. Que, once again, we're using that conjunction que tenga jardín. We don't know if that house exists. It's indefinite. So the subjunctive tenga is used. Then finally, en mi barrio hay una heladería que vende helado de mango. There is, you see that word right there? There is an ice cream store that sells mango ice cream. Isn't that delicious, mango ice cream? Wow. But that exists. It clearly exists because she's saying there is one. As opposed to, en mi barrio no hay ninguna heladería que venda helado de mango. Now here, this clause right here in the main clause is considered the negative antecedent. And so therefore, you will use the subjunctive right there. Even though you know there isn't any, it's a negative antecedent. The subjunctive is used. I will talk about negative antecedents in a little bit. So now, señoritas, did you know that you can use the subjunctive in questions? Well, let's take a look. They could be used in questions with adjective clauses when the speaker is trying to find out information about which he or she is uncertain. For example, ¿hay un parque que esté cerca de nuestro hotel? ¿Hay un parque? Is there a park? It's uncertain whether or not that park exists. So therefore, the subjunctive is used. However, if the person responds to the question knows the information, so let's say I'm responding, and I know that park exists somewhere, I'll use the indicative, and I'll say, sí, hay un parque, I know it exists, que está, indicative here. Indicative. Muy cerca del hotel. Now you may remember that last week when we talked about the future, I brought up the personal a, that the personal a really is important in Spanish. But look what happens here. The personal a is not used with direct objects that are hypothetical people. Hypothetical people. For example, necesitamos un empleado. We don't know if that person exists. It's hypothetical. Que sepa. It's indefinite whether that person exists and whether that person knows how to use computers. No personal a here. However, alguien, which means someone, let me write that down. Someone. And nadie, you all know what nadie means. No one or nobody. Are always preceded by the personal a when they function as direct objects. So, buscamos a alguien. We don't know if that person exists, but we need to put a personal a there because we're using alguien que pueda. And because we don't know if that person exists, there's the subjunctive right there. Buscamos a alguien que pueda cocinar. We're looking for someone who can cook. We don't know if that person exists. Now we have a list of 6 verbs right here that are commonly used with the subjunctive in adjective clauses. They are buscar, and I think you know all the meanings of these, so I won't go through these with you, but we have buscar, conocer, encontrar, haber. We're talking about I here. Pretty hard for me to write left-handed. I, that wasn't any good here. Better right there. I. And then necesitar and querer. Now let's talk about the negative antecedent right here. And it says when verbs in the main clause contain a negative statement, the subjunctive is used in the subordinate clause. This is called the negative antecedent. So we have conozco a alguien que habla italiano. I know someone who speaks Italian. This is indicative because you know that person. That person exists. As opposed to no conozco a nadie que hable. Here we have the subjunctive. Que hable italiano. Even though you're thinking, well, that's true, it's true. Spanish says that if the main clause is a negative In other words, the negative antecedent, the subjunctive is used. Here's another example. Hay un libro que es interesante. There's a book. It's right there. There's a book, or you know that a book exists. That is interesting. As opposed to the negative antecedent here. No hay ningún libro que sea interesante. So that would be the subjunctive right there because of the negative antecedent. Tengo un profesor que vive en Madrid. That professor exists. You have a professor, a teacher that lives in Madrid, as opposed to no tengo ningún profesor. That's the negative antecedent. The subjunctive is used. Que viva en Madrid. So that's about it right now. If you have any questions, si ustedes tienen preguntas, estaré en clase esperando. Entonces nos vemos. Gracias.